Coming up today on The View from a Pew, Friday style, Pastor Richard Webb and the Barbarians. Today live on View from the Pew.
Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
Let's get it started in here.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
4 minutes after 3 o'clock on this 12th day of September in the Lord's year 2014. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is the Friday edition of The View from a Pew. Frank sitting in today, Bob Montserrat taking the day off. Maddie, he texted me, you know, our studios, for those of you that don't know, are on the Skywalk. And we had one entrance blocked off when the Yonkers building burned. And then 2 weeks ago when the Equity building burned, we had a second exit. Now, I think we're out of, I think you've got to come in off the street, don't you?
Well, I'm on my third way down here. I walk from about 7th and Park, and I jump on the Skywalk down on Grand, and I'm on my third Skywalk route getting here.
Yeah, well... You know, that's what happens when Rome
I walk
burns.
almost up by the food court and then have to come back.
And come back by Capitol Square?
Right.
Yeah.
I just gave up, and even the streets are full of scaffolding, so you're picking your
Oh,
way
yeah.
around.
Yeah. I mean, they still haven't got that, but I don't know. It's insurance money, I guess. But anyway, Maddie will be here, and so we always say that when Maddie's here, it's 15% more fun, just because the bloke laughs so much. So we'll have to see what happens if and when he gets here. He may get derailed by an ice cream cone or something like that. I don't know.
Or a soccer game.
No, he did have a soccer game today. We're okay with that. Ryan's producing. Now, Richard, I want to talk about something really important today.
All right.
But before we get there, the voice, Frank, has got a theological question that he's struggling with.
Well, I don't know that I'm struggling with it, but
Well, you're struggling to convince me that you're right.
well, it was interesting. Mac and I are on Facebook together.
Uh-huh.
And I comment a lot on his posts, and something come up on the subject of the 70 weeks prophecy in the Bible, where 70 weeks would be determined upon thy people. I say that he is talking to Daniel, and Daniel's people would have been the Jews. So I believe that 70-week period kicked off, and Mac put a post. He says, very interesting. He said, we'll talk about it. And I haven't heard anything from him since. And I was trying to remind him of it, so he said, you want to talk about something today? I said, well, let's talk about the 70 weeks.
Well, you don't get much time on it because I have a regular topic I want to talk about. But
Is that all you get?
yeah, he gets a little time. That's fine.
Well, what about the 70 weeks are you discussing?
In my study, I feel like it kicked off in 457 BC. And it was a decree that King Artaxerxes was supposed to put out. And he was fighting Daniel for nearly 3 weeks. And finally, the Archangel Michael had to come to make sure that prayer got through and got answered, because Artaxerxes had to give that authorization to restore Jerusalem. Now, some people look at this restoration of Jerusalem as something in the future. I see it as in the past. I think the 70 weeks and the final week where the oblation and the sacrifice would be ceased, I believe that's Christ's death. I believe it kicked off in AD 27 with his baptism, his death in AD 31, and then the culmination happened in 34 AD, in my opinion, with the stoning of Stephen, which earmarked the gospel being given to the Gentile.
Interesting. Oh, I had never thought of it that way. I agree with your basic premise that it's about Jerusalem. It's about Second General Jerusalem under Herod. I know some people throw it all the way over to the future, you know, and I don't see that. Part of it is if you're going to throw the 70 weeks into the future, it depends on which Bible translation you use and where do you decide to put commas in English that don't exist in Aramaic, not even Hebrew. Whether I would get so precise as you've gotten, I'd have to take a look. I've never considered that. But I would say that the prophecy is about what happened finally in Second Temple Judaism and not the so-called end of the world. So,
now you said something where you thought that the 2,300 days was actually 2,300 years.
Yeah. Well, I think most people agree that in Bible prophecy, when it speaks of a day, it's a year. But I think the 70 weeks is included in the 2,300 year prophecy until 2,300 days. Then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. That 70 weeks kicked off, in my opinion, that 2,300 year process. So, but I wasn't sure. You made a comment on it on Facebook, but we never got back and discussed it, and we haven't discussed it on the show.
That's because I'm completely lost. First of all, it's non-essential, right? I mean, does it teach you to do anything? Does it prepare you for anything? Does it make you a better disciple?
Well,
it's the stuff that irritates your daughter. That's what it is.
Well, I believe that we are in what they call a probationary period, and that probation will close, and we will be mark of the beast or sealed by God. We'll be in two camps, and the Holy Spirit will withdraw from this earth. We're going to be saved, lost, sealed, lost, sealed, saved, and then God can come. That's my personal opinion on it.
So if I'm understanding, it sounds like post-trib or post-millennial, and it sounds like a version of dispensationalism of some kind. I'm not a dispensationalist. I'm an Augustinian. So God shows up, cleans up the pool, everybody's heart, and then everybody gets to do the party for real.
Well, a lot of people think that the book of Revelation is kind of first part of Revelation says it's going to reveal something. So it's fixing to reveal something. A lot of people view Revelation as something that was the ravings of a madman.
Oh no, he was very smart and actually really had a real life vision. I just take seriously who it was sent to, not the last generation before Christ comes, but to the 7 churches. So the 7 churches understood exactly what John was getting at. And frankly, if you know the Jewish narrative, I think Revelation suddenly becomes very clear. It's not the mysterious book that Christians have made it out to be. He is writing in a style that Daniel would have recognized, Ezekiel would have recognized. Jesus certainly used the same style. It's called apocalyptic literature. It's actually a literary form, and it was a way of making prophecies understandable with Jewish symbolism. And so I just have a different take for me.
Who are the 7 churches? The 7 tribes.
Wow. No, 7 churches, actually. 7 real-life churches that go right up a valley, starting with Ephesus. And they're mostly, they're in eastern Turkey, and if I can remember them.
Well, but the point is, it's not Christianity.
Yes, it is.
It is.
It's first century Christianity.
Does it include us?
Well, all Scripture includes us, but its primary recipients were these 7 churches, and they were struggling in one of 3 ways. One was they were just being flat out persecuted. Others were having internal strife. And the third group were those, well, actually there's 4 ways. The third group were those who were being pressured to assimilate into pagan Roman culture. And the fourth group all thought that they were all that in a bag of chips, and they were probably the ones in the worst shape, Laodicea, where they were famous. There's an aqueduct that ran between a bunch of these cities, and Laodicea was between the top one originated where the water was hot, and then everybody else downstream got it cold. Laodicea got the water lukewarm. Paul, and God says through John, you're like that water you guys drink. It makes you all want to throw up.
Yeah.
You know. They were also famous for their clothing, and so there's this thing, well, put on fine clothing. I mean, your city's known for it. So spiritually speaking, wear clean stuff. So there's a lot of speaking right into the context of the city. So that's why I'm persuaded that the book was originally written and understood by probably a first to second generation of Jesus followers. I date it no later than 90 AD. So I date it early like a lot of people do.
When I bring up, Pastor Richard Webb is our guest here from Lutheran Church of Hope. Maddie's finally here.
Yay, Maddie.
I got lost on the way, mate. They've blocked off some of the skywalk.
Well, they're unblocked on the way home. We just did that to mess you up. Frank, the voice, is here, and Ryan's producing. I've had some guys in my Bible study say they don't want to do Revelation. That Revelation is a dream, a vision, and that it doesn't have anything to do, that there's nothing that it says in Revelation that helps us be better disciples today.
Oh, I would completely disagree. And I think regardless of where we date it and interpret it, there's some really practical advice on Christian living all the way through it. And also the visions, they send one loud signal, regardless of what you do with the details. God's in charge, and Caesar isn't. God's in charge, and whatever empire that's pushing down on you isn't, and the devil certainly isn't. And that's a pretty important message of hope. The other is that there are two different stories. There's the story of God, and there's the story of evil. The choice you make about which story you live in will have consequences. And there's no compromise. That's a big theme in the early part is you can't be a Christian and be indistinguishable from the culture, not because God's going to get mad at you, but because it's impossible. That's a big one, especially where the churches are tempted to assimilate. Another big one is you can look as orthodox as the day is long, you can have the purest doctrine and the greatest morals, but if you've lost your love, you might as well have compromised everything. And
Our love.
Yeah, our love.
For our neighbor, for our enemies, for God.
All of the above.
Okay.
Because the center of our primary witness is based on our character. Otherwise, we got no street cred when we open our mouths.
Okay. Did you get the answers you needed over there, Thessalonian?
Well, I have just one little short view of this. Is
Go ahead.
if for example, in Revelation, the apostate church who's going to persecute the Christians at the end of the time was named by name instead of this apocryphal writing or this dream-like, vision-like, beast symbolism, would that book have got past the censors when Constantine sought to canonize the Bible? And in other words, I think they thought that book was the ravings of a madman. And it had, in other words, this Laodicean church, there's two characteristics. They're apathetic, they're lazy. I think that's speaking to us right now, because I think not only is Revelation a history book, but I think it's a book that foretells the future.
It does so in the sense of if the shoe fits. I think we go a bit too far if we say it is definitely about the 21st century church. But I would say it's definitely about any church that looks like Laodicea. So in that way, I would use kind of what I guess you'd call the signs and types interpretation. Again, for me, is that I know some people speculate it was written in code, but I think it's pretty blatant. If you're reading it in the first century, even the Romans, if they got a hold of it, would start lopping heads off. Because to mistake the satire on the Roman Empire, you'd have to work pretty hard to not catch it. I mean, it's the way, in fact, the way that John compares the goddess Roma with basically a drunken prostitute, you know.
Well, what helps me in Revelation is to study Daniel together in combination with Revelation. And Daniel is told at the end of the book to shut the book up and seal it up to a future date. And I believe that future date is when John opened the book up again in Revelation. And I personally think it applies to end times events. But
yeah, no, I'm a first century guy.
Yeah,
What does that mean? You're a first century guy.
The book was not written as future history. The book was written to show the first century Christians that God was involved from top to bottom.
Okay.
But it was never designed to be, well, first of all, I don't believe in a rapture. I don't believe in a tribulation. I don't believe in a millennium. I do believe in a tribulation and millennium as qualities of existence. So technically speaking, we're living right now both in the millennium and in the tribulation. But I don't believe that that the system to me doesn't hold. So I have a much simpler system. God shows up, justice happens, restoration occurs, and the party gets started.
Pastor Richard Webb, Lutheran Church of Hope. And when we come back, we're kind of talking about the same thing here. We're talking about a book that I'm reading in the middle of by Erwin Raphael McManus, and it's called The Barbarian Way. And I'll tell you a little bit about the book. You won't need to read it. You won't miss anything if you haven't read it. And a little bit about what as Christians should we really be acting like? What is our call? What is our our tradition compared to our relationship. That's next here on KTIA.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
See them here, see them there. You got bad credit? We don't care. Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com. Visit emetroford.com today.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
We've got questions. You've got the answer. Join the conversation. It's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Okay, welcome back. It's 21 minutes after the hour on this 12th day of September in the Lord's year 2014. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Special guest today, Pastor Richard Webb from Lutheran Church of Hope, co-host today with Frank. And my heavens, is soccer season over?
No, it's in the middle of it, but
Well, then how could you be here?
I just got away with it today.
Soccer season is never over.
It's never over, but it's...
Do they play soccer in the rain?
Oh, of course we do.
okay.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, everything.
All right, well, I'm glad you're
mate.
here.
They play it in northern Germany in the middle of the snow.
Yeah, exactly. They do. They have a winter break, though, in Germany.
Yeah, about all 4 weeks.
Yeah, 4 weeks. Yeah, that's all it is.
There's a book kind of going around some of the men out at Hope. Now, have you read the book yet?
Yes, I have. It's been a while, though.
Okay. Yeah, it's been out for, I think, for...
Years.
Yeah, like 9 or 10 years. You may have heard of McManus. He has a church in Los Angeles, downtown, the heart of Los Angeles, and he actually meets in a nightclub every Sunday. Mosaic is the name of it, and it's been around 20 years. Very popular church, very well known. He's written several books. But one of the books that he wrote is called The Barbarian Way. Unleash the Untamed Faith Within the Barbarian Way. And it started out with, I think Perry got a hold of it. And then he got it over to, I think it was some of the guys on his team, on the worship team. And then it got to some of the Men of Hope. And I got a copy of it to Al Lorenzen. And Lorenzen showed it to all the guys in the Wednesday morning group. And before I know it, I think Cindy says she sold like 30 books or something like that.
Wow, 30 books out of our bookstore. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I bought like 6 of them.
Oh, dang.
Because I keep giving them out to people.
So are you rigging the charts for the bestseller list?
I don't know. Maybe.
The Hope bestseller list.
But here is the paragraph, or actually it's 2 paragraphs, that really got my attention. And let me read them to you. Christianity has become our Shawshank, and our redemption will only come if we find the courage to escape the prison we have created for ourselves. Risking everything to live free is our only hope, humanity's only hope. Jesus is being lost in a religion bearing his name. People are being lost because they cannot reconcile Jesus's association with Christianity. Christianity has become docile, domesticated, and civilized. We have forgotten that there is a kingdom of darkness stealing the hopes and dreams and souls of a humanity living without God. It is time to hear the barbarian call, to form a barbarian tribe, and to unleash the barbarian revolt. Let the invasion begin. You said earlier, this sounds like starting a revolution. Reformation. Well, and a revolution.
Well, John the Baptist called his generation of the time a generation of vipers. That doesn't that sounds kind of barbaric.
Well, and it's interesting because the second chapter in the book is all about John the Baptist and how he wore camel skin cape and ate locusts and honey. And so here's one of the questions I have for you. First of all, how would you surmise that preview of the book?
Oh, that's a fantastic set of paragraphs. My thought was, wow, I don't even know where to start. In fact, I was talking with someone today about that. And also yesterday, some of the foundational problems with modern Christianity. One is our definition of salvation, go right to the heart. Most people think salvation is an afterlife scheme. And while it obviously includes the afterlife, the main point is following Jesus
now,
getting out of our prison, as he says, living what Paul calls new creation. It's so radical, John has to call it born again because there's no other way to describe it. And we've domesticated it like some purring house pet.
Yeah, and what we do is we honor tradition more than we honor relationship, or religion more than relationship.
I would say we honor get along to go along more than anything other relationship. Okay. In other words, and this isn't unique to the 21st century, very quickly the Jesus movement began to look strangely like a Greco-Roman pagan religion. Now, I'm not like some people within the Mormon tradition who think we've lost all our doctrine, lost our Bible, and have to get a brand new one. Ironically, the transmission of the stories in Scripture has been faithful. We've chosen to read them completely wrong. And so what we've done is we said, believe the right doctrine, maybe pray a prayer, maybe do a ritual called going forward, and then you're guaranteed an afterlife. And some versions say, well, you got to do some discipleship or good works to prove you got predestined. Others say, no, it's all free. That's an option. Jesus would love you to do it, but you don't really have to. And so for many people, what they profess on Sunday morning is utterly disconnected Monday through Saturday. And again, that's been a common complaint, but I think the root of it is what we are up to an afterlife scheme, or is what we are up to is living a different story?
Yep.
And we should be living a different story.
Yeah, and ironically, a way we often say it at Hope is heaven. Heaven is already here, not in its fullness, but we don't have to wait till we die to go to heaven. Following Jesus is the beginning of heaven.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's something that I know that our guys, Maddie, we've learned on the Wednesday morning Bible study as Paul has taken us through, the sanctification part. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that sanctification is not a microwavable moment. Mm-mm. It happens till the moment I take my last breath, and mm-hmm. then I'm glorified. Mm-hmm. And you've seen that statue, I think. I think I've shown you that born-again mm-hmm. statue. That's a perfect example of it. But
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. 25 cents.
I've got my card.
It's for the pastor's retirement fund.
You
So
better
is
ask a
it-
lot of questions.
So have we sanitized Christianity because it makes us uncomfortable? There's bits of it make us uncomfortable, and it's not, because that's when I feel that in terms, not just materially, but just the way we live, we don't like. We don't like some of the things that Christianity demands of us. Is that the right thing?
Absolutely, but I think it goes further. I would, just off the top of my head, 3 levels of conflict that a Jesus follower runs into very fast. The first one is themselves, what Paul calls the old nature or the flesh.
Right.
And we are at war with our old way of living, our old sense of making sense of ourselves. We are at war with our impulses.
Right.
So up close and personal. The second point of conflict would be our culture and its values. And I believe that together with our old nature, we don't want to pay the price of being distinct.
Right.
I mean, we see how Israel got kicked in the teeth over and over again for being a unique people, all the way up to the Holocaust, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And the third one would be actually the way we think in Western culture is so foundationally different to the world of the Bible. Sometimes what Jesus says is incomprehensible because it runs straight against Greco-Roman thinking, which is what Western culture does. In fact, Luther once said, and this is pretty shocking when you think about it, no one can be a theologian of the cross and be a student of Aristotle. And there he took on all of Western philosophy in one single sentence. And basically said, if, for example, grace resists cause and effect. If you must live in a world of cause and effect, grace is impossible. And we could go on from there.
But unpack that for me.
Well, cause and effect, practically speaking, is there ain't no free lunch. You've got to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You need to be a self-made man.
Okay.
You got to do it all by yourself. And with hard work, we can achieve anything. Heaven helps them who helps themselves,
Right. Which isn't in the Bible.
Nope. No, in fact, I think the heaven helps the broken, the banged up, the addicts, the spit out, the kicked out, the beat up, the horrible decision makers, the desperate, the hopeless. That's who heaven helps.
I was having lunch today with a very, very good friend of mine who is a devout and loyal Catholic, 62, 63-year-old guy. And we got into the conversation of theology and faith, and he said, "Are you sure that God has forgiven you for all your garbage you did all your life?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "You're being a Catholic again. You're thinking that I got to do something or pay something to earn God's grace, and it's not that way at all."
It's funny because there's another Catholic priest. He died recently, Brendan Manning, who would say, "Hi, I'm a Catholic, and I will tell you that it's all been covered and paid for." My spiritual director that I had once, who was also a Catholic priest, would tell me the same thing. In fact, he kept saying things like, "You're a Lutheran, you should know better. Where's the grace?"
Yeah, yeah.
So what would this guy say then if you said, you asked him that question?
Who, McManus?
No, the
No,
guy
this
you were
guy here.
talking to at lunch. If you flipped it around the other way, have you been forgiven? What would he say?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, you missed it, Mac.
Yeah, I guess I did. But I think he'd probably say I work on it every day.
And again, interestingly enough, he has company. Did you know they did a survey, now it's about 20 years ago, on how do you get to heaven? And they asked Protestants, including Lutherans and everybody. The vast majority, liberal and conservative Protestants, said, be good.
Be good.
Yeah, we're talking Southern Baptists, Lutherans, Pentecostals. Most people don't get grace no more.
Wow.
Yeah, and now your average Catholic would say the same thing.
And that's kind of what we're talking about in the barbarian way. Because a barbarian, well, let's define barbarian for just a moment. Now, you had your finger up. Do you want to, before we get off this?
Just a quick question. What part do you think the church's bottom line, since atheism is on the rise, church membership is on the decline, does it have anything to do with butts in the seats, the watered-down, lukewarm message we're getting in some churches?
Yes, and we have compromised the gospel in about 40 different directions. One is watering it down. You're absolutely right. The other, though, and this is where the barbarian way is right, but I've watched people take something like that and miss it. Let me frame the problem. One way is that we water everything down and basically say God's your butler, God's your therapist, God will pat you on the back when you burp and heal your owie, and there are no consequences to bad decisions. There's a lot of that where what Christ died basically so you can do what you please. That's a very old, perverted form of grace. The other is, and this happens often with every revival, is no, Christianity, it has consequences and content. And so what it means to be a Christian is to work hard. And depending on which revival it is, it means to have lots of religious experiences to prove you're saved, or to get saved, or to stay saved, or to be a moral person, to one of the three, or to work real hard and win others for Christ, for one of the three. In other words, discipleship often becomes proof of salvation, a way to stay saved, or a way to get saved. All three are misfires of discipleship. And so then what happens is the next wave says, oh, that's all works righteousness. We're back to grace. It's all freedom. And there's this oscillation, and both are wrong. And this is why I think Dallas Willard got it right about 20 years ago when he said in The Divine Conspiracy, salvation is utterly free, no conditions whatsoever. And salvation is following Jesus. Now that started a firestorm in the Protestant camp because they thought he'd sold out the Reformation. But if you listen carefully, he solved the problem. Discipleship is not a polite option. It's not proof for salvation. It's not a way to salvation. And it's definitely not a way to stay saved. It is salvation itself. Heaven is when you are remade in the image of Christ and you begin to be in restored relationships among his people. Obviously, as long as we're on this side of the resurrection, heaven is partial. But it is a gift to live a different life, not an obligation. And people miss that because the old flesh says, what? Let go of all that stuff? That's works righteousness. I want to be my dysfunctional, self-sabotaging, hurting others mess because I live in grace.
And that's not true?
Well, let's put it this way. Being a self-satisfied, dysfunctional, hurting others mess will not make God love you any less, but God loves you so much, he wants you to be whole because he calls that broken.
Yeah, and I would agree. But all right, well, we're up against a hard break, and when we come back, I'll tell you about a friend of mine on Facebook, no names. And I said to this guy one day, I said, "Hey, do you know Jesus?" And he came back and he said, "Jesus and I are tight." And for the last year, there hasn't been a nice word out of him about anybody. Where's he at? We'll talk about it.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's gotta be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? You can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going, though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
We're the ones in the pew, not pulpit. Come on now, let's reason together. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
22 minutes before the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News at 4, and then it's True Blue with Michael Mudloff from Westkirk Presbyterian Church right here on KTIA. My special guest today, teaching Pastor Richard Webb from Lutheran Church of Hope, The Voice. Frank in the studio today, and of course, Maddie. Matt, it's so nice to have you here, Maddie. How long has it been?
Since I've been on the show?
Yeah, since the last time, right?
Yeah, June.
Yeah,
Maybe
probably.
June.
It's when the soccer match was going on.
The World Cup was on?
Yeah.
U.S. was still in it.
Yeah.
And we were out of it, and you were making fun of me?
No. It's that the U.S. was in it and had a second chance. They had lost a game, and that's when you were in here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there was still, I remember
June.
that. That was June. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about salvation and sanctification and justification, and how much do we really have to do with our receiving salvation? And the answer is 0, right?
Right, and then there's paradoxes that flow from that.
Which are?
Well, we have nothing to do it whatsoever, and we're in the thick of it, in the absolute middle of it at the same time.
So I've got a friend on Facebook, and I really like this guy. And he and I were going to go out to lunch one time. I'd never met him, and we were going to go out to lunch for one time. And he's got a sailor's mouth, and he's very aggressive with people who irritate him. And I said to him one day on a private message, I said, hey, I'd like to introduce you to Jesus someday. And he said, oh, Jesus and I are good. And then he went on for weeks upon months, probably a year now again, and we've never been able to get together, and still has that attitude, that pushing people around and kind of a bully and foul-mouthed. Is he good? Is he okay with Jesus be acting like that towards other people? I mean, he's not loving his neighbor. He's not forgiving people. He's threatening people, but he thinks he's good with Jesus.
Well, I'm just going to quote some stuff, and again, I don't know the person, or maybe I do, and they're going to come and take me out when I'm done.
It's Mark Brandt.
Okay, well, Mark, let me just tell you. No, kidding. He's gonna do you in, bro, and he'll have justification, and still be sanctified. Seriously, there were times where Jesus confronted that. He said to people who basically had it that way as, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? That was kind of a big shot across the bow. Another one is John, which ironically was one of Luther's favorite epistles, 1 John. It says, the one who claims to, the one who does not love their brother or sister does not have the love of God within them. These are pretty sharp statements.
Yeah.
Which, again, what I think that says, let's look at the promise side, not just the threat. It means if we truly say yes to the gift of salvation God gives us, he wants to put us back together. The converse is, it is an unthing, it's kind of a German philosophical term, in other words, something that does not really exist, to claim to be a Christian and to willfully live an old existence defined by self. It's just a contradiction in terms. N.T. Wright, when he was talking about that, basically, I'd call it a Christless Christianity, or where people claim to follow Jesus without following Jesus, or where they've reduced their faith to singing 3 songs and listening to a talk once a week, and saying that's my faith walk, and it's never penetrating their Monday through Friday life.
Yeah, it's the checkoff.
Yeah, it's a checkoff. N.T. Wright said Jesus and his followers would find that unrecognizable. And again, I think we've talked about earlier, I think one of the things that's taken out the contemporary Christian church is people who claim to follow Jesus without following Jesus. It's a huge problem. And frankly, another way of putting it is can you drink your own Kool-Aid? Do you think it's toxic?
Well, you know my story. I lived for 50 years, 45 since I was 5 years old, thinking me and God were fine. And I would ask, I may have even asked you at one point or another, I don't get this Jesus thing. What do I need with Jesus if I've got Dad? Well, after Jesus showed up in my life, it was obvious to me that I was as lukewarm as I could get. But Richard, I thought I was okay.
And here's the good news out of all that is God will take any leverage point he can find. So your friend who thinks he and Jesus are tight, but yet it's not, it's not messed with his life yet. Jesus is like, you wait.
Yeah.
I'm going to mess with you. I'm going to work your history, your life circumstances. You're going to run into me every chance you get to that you're sick of it, or you just give in and let me heal you.
Yeah.
And so there's a double edge to the promise, and lo, I will be with you to the end of the age.
Yeah, right.
That goes both ways.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought of it like that.
Explain. Works doesn't save us, but explain to us how works associates itself with faith. Because without works, faith is dead.
Absolutely.
So tell us how those two things work together.
I'm going to start out with a little dictionary fun. In both Hebrew, amazingly, and Greek, it's rare that this happens in both languages at once. The Hebrew word for faith is omein. It's the main word, and in Greek it's pistis. And in both of them, to translate them, just faith is a reduction of the words. They mean all at once: faith, trust, faithfulness, and trustworthiness, and loyalty. And so the notion that you could take that word and have it mean only faith but not faithfulness is weird. And that makes sense. Let's just go just brass tacks, human relationships. If you have a healthy marriage, the trust you have in your spouse generates faithfulness to your spouse. I trust her, therefore I'm faithful to her. Well, I'm faithful anyways if I have decent ethics. But the more she's trustworthy as we go further in the relationship over the years, the more doing anything unfaithful would become unthinkable in a healthy relationship, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's exactly how it works with God. Because God has an amazing track record, and as it becomes up close and personal in our relationship with Christ, we can't help but respond in faithfulness. This is why there's this little Sunday school song, trust and obey, there is no other way but to be happy in Jesus. While it sounds real trite, they're onto something. Obedience is the natural behavior that spontaneously flows from trust.
Right.
If I trust somebody, I will take you seriously and do probably anything you say. And yet in Christianity, we've managed to claim we trust Jesus, for our afterlife at least, but don't trust him with our lives right now. And that's the problem, is really it's a trust issue, not a works issue.
So if we don't trust him with the afterlife, we don't really trust him with the afterlife, do we?
We don't trust him with anything, honestly.
Yeah. If you don't trust him with both, how can you can't, can you?
No, it becomes a contradiction again.
So if you're married, though, and you never do nothing nice for your wife, how far do you think that's going to get you?
Well, let's put it this way. She's going to give you a card for her lawyer very fast. Now, I don't want to wander into eternal security arguments because that gets complicated and muddy, and God is more bound and determined to get us into heaven than we are to resist him.
Yeah.
And that's a really important thing as we talk about this, so we don't suddenly terrify everybody and everybody's running around wondering if they're truly saved. I grew up in that nonsense.
Right.
I accepted Jesus 10 times at least. To be honest, only 6. But I had to make sure it took. And we don't want to get into that kind of terror Christianity. That's an abuse of discipleship. But what we want to talk about again, and this is why I use a lot of language of heaven starts now, is when we actually trust the dude with our lives, then he puts our lives back together. He makes good on that trust. So we can follow him, not we must follow him. We can. He's good for it.
Pastor Richard Webb is our guest today, and we're coming up on our last break. And when we come back, I want to go back to this book that I've been reading, The Barbarian Way. And I'm going to get the book on tape, too. The folks up at the Boone King's Christian bookstore up in Boone ordered me the CDs. Apparently they were out of print, but they found them on eBay or something like that, because I'm interested in hearing this as well as reading it. But you made a comment to me the other day in Tuesday morning Bible study that the barbarians were Jews, but they weren't obedient Jews. Now, that was my words, not yours. Because they were on the wrong side of the tracks. They weren't going to temple. They didn't care what the Pharisees said. They lived somewhat barbarically. But yet 8 of the 12 disciples that Jesus chose were from the barbarian tribe.
Not barbarian, they were poor. Everybody else regarded them as barbarians.
Okay.
So they were not literally rebellious. It's that the poor people could not keep the kosher laws and couldn't afford the sacrifices.
We'll talk about that when we come back. Pastor Richard Webb in the house, the voice, Maddie and me, Ryan producing, and you. Thanks for listening to KTIA. Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
Get away from us, you neat old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
We've got questions. You've got the answer. Join the conversation. It's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
10 minutes before the hour, top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News, and then True Blue with Michael Mudloff. Pastor Richard is our guest today, and you started to say...
Oh, I've been spending a lot of time in the questions you've been asking. They, to me, are crucial to, I think, the health and future of the American church, is that we get straight what we mean when we say things like saved, born again, justified, sanctified, and not so much to get our doctrine straight, but for what they imply about living a transformed life where heaven truly does start now.
You know, I have people who either have never attended a service at our church or have attended one, and it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, it's big, and it's loud, and it's a production, and da-da-da-da-da. But I visit other churches that are quote-unquote traditional. Not much Jesus there. A lot of doctrine, a lot of law, a lot of tradition, not much relationship. How does a church the size of ours get it so right? And we're not perfect, but we really, if it's not in the Bible, we're not interested in it.
Well, and I would say that's true of churches also that I've been at that have pipe organs and choirs, where when a church thrives, regardless of what denomination, it's first of all centered on Jesus and what he's done, the gospel. And then it's also centered on how human beings intersect with that. It's prioritizes teaching people God's story in Scripture. It prioritizes creating situations where people can grow in Christ with each other and also wherever they are in the world. When churches do that, they just can't help but thrive.
Yeah.
Now they may not become 10,000, and that's not the point. That's actually kind of weird, and that's more God's unique blessing. No credit. In fact, Pastor Mike says, hey, we haven't a clue how this has happened. And I think he's right. I think this is just something God is doing uniquely, but it's not because we're so smart or even so faithful.
I would say so humble.
Well,
we're teachable, right?
Yeah, but again, I kind of avoid causes for it. But I do know that there's some things that I think we share in common with other healthy churches. And again, like you said, we're not perfect. But there are other healthy churches in town that do the same thing we do, and God is working powerfully through them regardless of their size. But I think it starts out that, as our first value, Jesus is everything, the rest is details.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I love, you've given me two great answers to two questions that boggled my mind. One of them was predestination or free will, and your answer is yes. And then, am I here to defend the gospel or simply to proclaim it? And your email back to me was, God's a big dude. He can defend himself. And that is the simplicity of the relationship that Jesus has with us. Okay, back to the book, The Barbarian Way. So if I'm a barbarian for Jesus, what am I? How am I different than other people?
Oh, wow. Where do we start? First of all, your identity is different. You're not defined by culture. You're not defined by your ability to produce or your desire for others, your competence, your youth, your strength, whatever it is. You're defined top to bottom as Christ's. Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote this wonderful poem where he says, who am I? And then the first half of the poem is, people say I'm this wonderful, amazing, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes on to, he starts reflecting on his interior where it's a mess. And he says, but I know I'm this, these awful things. Who am I really? And then he says, well, at the end of the day, it turns out the poem's a prayer. He says, I am, O Lord, I am thine. And so that's the center of what it means to be a barbarian, is to know who you are.
Okay.
And you won't know who you are until you know who Jesus says you are. Flowing from there, as we know, if we discover who we are called to be, we also become open then to how Jesus wants us to live that out. And then we become good listeners, first and foremost through Scripture, but also through community and circumstances. And then we begin to step out in faith and live out the barbarian way. That means something. We see other people differently. We see them as people God is furiously in love with.
Yeah.
And that we are called also to be in love with them and to be available to literally, first of all, model the gospel of Jesus, but then to speak it as the Spirit gives us the time to do it.
And the model of the gospel of Jesus is really just love. Not finding that I can carve you out because you do this, or I'm going to carve you out because, you're a sinner because you're that kind of sin. Jesus accepted none of, he accepted all of that.
Jesus did something amazing that's very difficult to achieve. Is he had clear boundaries on who he was and what the way of life was. He didn't water any of it down, but at the same time he accepted everyone, but then called them to something way better than they were experiencing. His sharpest words were still reserved for religious people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he called people to life change. And, it's interesting, he exposed the absolute misery the woman at the well was in, stuff that she'd done, stuff that had been done to her, and he did it in such a way that she turned into John's first evangelist.
Yeah.
So whatever he did, he gave her life and changed her life in the process.
And he accepts our sin, and if he accepts our sin, then who am I as flesh to tell you that I can't accept you because of your sin?
He accepts us. And I want to just nuance what you said a little bit. He doesn't accept our sin in the sense of it's okay, but he accepts us as broken sinners.
Yeah.
For the sake that we might not be.
And he died for the sin.
Yeah. In other words, he's so furiously in love with us, he will take us, baggage and all. And sometimes we're Christians even before we know we are. Now, I have to be very responsible with that statement. In other words, he's drawing us in when we have no clue.
Yes.
And we can debate over when we finally cross the line into being a Christ follower, but I'd rather let him sort that out. But he's got designs for life change long before we knew what we even desired it.
Yeah.
And so he accepts us unconditionally so that we might have life and that we would be rescued, as McManus says, from our prison.
Yeah. And the prison is sin, evil, tradition, religion.
I'm very careful with those words because tradition can be a good thing and a bad thing. Because, in fact, the Bible's a tradition. Think about it. Yeah,
is it really?
Yeah, absolutely. Tradition is anything handed down. That's what the word literally means, to hand down.
But the Bible does not change with society. Tradition can.
Some can. The point is, I don't worry about that word. That word's too loaded to use effectively. There's good traditions and bad traditions.
Yeah.
And the word religion happens to be the English word for anybody who has something with a god. So we're stuck with the word.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like the word, but it's there. But I think your point holds is this, is sin is, I would put it this way, sin is my own self-defeating, self-destructive behavior. It is also my own damaging behavior towards the neighbor. It is also found in the larger community of society, and it has a supernatural component with a coherent force we call the devil. And all that seeks to do us in. It's manifest in death, the ultimate enemy. And Jesus, as Luther say, broke the power of sin, death, and the devil, and set us free into life, health, and salvation.
So what disciple do you represent the most?
What, you mean of the 12?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm probably a combination of Peter and Paul. I'm a geek like Paul. I won't claim to be anywhere. I mean, so I'm talking about more his geekness, not about how smart he was.
Yeah.
And I am like Peter, where it's ready, fire, aim.
Pastor Richard Peter Webb has been our guest today, and Frank's here, and Maddie's here, and Ryan's here, and I'm here, and I thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you next week here on The View from a Pew on KTIA, Iowa.